Hello, and welcome to today's Saturday workshop. We're on workshop 5. And hello, my name is JD Crumedy, and I'll be running today's elementary school VEX robotic workshop. So let's get started. So here again, we have the C-STEM Challenge Academic Year Pacing Guide. And right now we should be on Cycle 6, Artifact Production. So the students will construct their robotics project solution based on their final prototype. Now, today I want to conduct a detailed discussion of the objectives and rules of the elementary school robotics competition, as well as going over the details of the obstacles on the robotics field. So, remember that for Objective 1, the robot will move the desalination technology from its original position to the Hello, and welcome to today's Saturday workshop. We're on workshop 5. And hello, my name is JD Crumedy, and I'll be running today's elementary school VEX robotic workshop. So let's get started. So here again, we have the C-STEM Challenge Academic Year Pacing Guide. And right now we should be on Cycle 6, Artifact Production. So students will construct their robotics project solution based on their final prototype. Now, today I want to conduct a detailed discussion of the objectives and rules of the elementary school robotics competition, as well as going over the details of the obstacles on the robotics field. So, remember that for Objective 1, the robot will move the desalination technology from its original position to the seawater treatment zone, which are both pictured here in this example of the field. A team can score up to 20 points for each desalination technology successfully transferred and kept within its seawater treatment zone when the game ends. Which means that it's possible once you get the desalination technology to your seawater treatment zone, it's possible for you to have it stolen by the other players before the game ends, in which case you won't retain the 20 points. As you can see in the image on the previous slide, there will be a total of 4 desalination technologies on the playing field. Each team must transfer at least 1 desalination technology to its seawater treatment zone before its robot attempts to move on to Objective 2. Teams can transport however many desalination technologies they can manage. So you can have more than one in your seawater treatment zone at the end of the game, which will give you 20 points for each one. Or you could have none left if they're stolen, then you won't get any points for the for the desalination technologies. But you must transfer one of them to the seawater treatment zone before you move on to Objective 2. And speaking of Objective 2, the rules for that are that one team member in the human player zone will transfer the clean water, the 2-inch styrofoam ball game pieces, into the water tank, which is the geometric 3D printed container. The elementary VEX robot will then transport the container from the seawater treatment zone to the hydropower dam. Teams will receive 40 points for each of the styrofoam balls representing clean water that are transferred over the 1-foot wall that represents the hydropower dam. Note that the thickness of the wall pictured here is about 1 3/4 inches. Now, the human player in possession of the water tank, or the 3D container, and the clean water represented by styrofoam balls may begin placing as much clean water as will fit within the water tank as soon as the game begins. Once the team's robot has placed at least 1 desalination technology in the seawater treatment zone, then the human player can place the water tank on the robotics field anywhere within the start zone where the robot first began the game. But remember not to place it there before the robot has completed Objective 1. After transferring clean water to the hydropower dam, robots can return their water tank back to the human player and place it in the start zone to allow the human player to refill the tank. If a water tank is retrieved from another robot, it can be used in another team's hydropower dam to score additional points. But remember, you can't touch the water tank until the robot places it in the start zone. So touching any of the pieces on the field other than that at that specific time will cause penalties. By now, you should be testing your robots and practicing with the completion of the 2 objectives using objects that are similar in size and shape to the game pieces that your robot will be interacting with during the robotics competition. Now we're going to review 2 quick videos showing the VEX Claw robots interacting with objects to give you an idea of how you'll be practicing. So first we'll start with this first video. Now we can watch the second video. Okay, second video is complete, so we will continue with the presentation. So here we're going to detail some of the penalties that are in the rules for the competition. Now, if a human player places the water tank within the start zone before the team's robot has placed at least one desalination technology in the seawater treatment zone, that player's team will incur a 30-point penalty. So if you try to get a jump start on Objective 2 before the robot has completed Objective 1, you lose 30 points. After the start of the game, if a human player touches either robot or water tank filled with clean water that has already been placed in the start zone, that player's team will incur a 50-point penalty. So this means once you place the tank down in the start zone, you cannot touch it again until after the robot has taken it, dumped the styrofoam balls, and then returned it to the start zone again. And you can never touch any robot on the field during the competition. Either one will cost 50 points to your team. Other rules are that only the materials that were sent with the current robotic kits are allowed to be used in the competition in the construction of the robot. No additional pieces can be added to the robot. So this means that you cannot use any leftover parts from previous robotics competitions or any other extra parts that you might have. Each robotics round is 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and teams will earn an additional 10 points if the robot returns to its starting position at the end of the challenge, when the 2 minutes and 30 seconds are up. Now, the obstacle on the elementary school robotics field is the wooden ramp shown here. The ramp is a long trapezoidal prism with the following dimensions. So the height of the ramp is 2 3/8 of an inch. The short base, which is the one pictured here from the top view in the middle, is 1 foot and 7 16 inches long. The long base is 2 feet and 9.5 inches long, and the total length of the ramp from one side to the other is 5 feet and 11.5 inches. And that's all I have today. So thank you for attending. And if you have any questions, you can chat me live on CSTEM Break right now, or you can contact me through my email at shown here techadmin@cstem.org. And that I will see you for our final workshop on April 12th, 2014. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Workshop 5. My name is JD Kermit and I will be leading today's Middle School Vex Robotics Workshop. Alright, let's get started. So here we have the CSIM Challenge Academic Year Pacing Guide again. Right now it should be at Cycle 6, Artifact Production. The students will construct their robotics project solutions based on their final prototype. So today I will conduct a detailed discussion of the objectives and rules of the Middle School Robotics Competition. Also I will go over the details of the obstacles on the robotics field. So objective 1 is that the robot will move the water purification system from its original position to the wastewater treatment zone, both of which are shown here. A team can score up to 20 points for each water purification system successfully transferred and kept within its wastewater treatment zone when the game ends. Now notice here it has to be kept within this zone at the end of the game. This is because you must transfer one water purification system from its original position to the wastewater treatment zone to complete objective 1, but you can transfer more than that or not, and it's possible for you to steal another team's water purification system from their zone. So you can have more than one of these in your zone at the end of the competition, or none at all, and each one within will give you 20 points towards your team. And as you can see in the image on the previous slide, there will be a total of 4 water purification systems on the playing field. So you can have at most 4 within your zone, or anywhere from 0 to 4 within your zone when the game ends. Each team must transfer at least one water purification system to its wastewater treatment zone before its robot attempts to move on to objective 2. Teams can transport however many water purification systems they can manage. Now here's objective 2. One team member in the human player zone will transfer the clean water, represented by 2-inch styrofoam balls, into the water tank, represented by the geometric 3D printed container that everyone should be working on now. And the middle Vex robot will transfer the water tank from the wastewater treatment zone to the hydropower dam. Teams will receive 40 points for each of the styrofoam balls represented clean water that are transferred over the 1-foot wall that represents the hydropower dam. You should note that the thickness of the 1-foot wall is about 1 3/4 inches. The human player in possession of the water tank, the geometric 3D printing container, and clean water styrofoam balls may begin placing as much clean water as will fit within the water tank as soon as the game begins. Once the team's robot has placed at least one water purification system in the wastewater treatment zone, the human player can place the water tank on the robotic fields anywhere within the start zone where the robotic began the competition. After transferring clean water to the hydropower dam, robots can return their water tank back to the human player and place it in the start zone to allow the human player to refill the tank. If a water tank is retrieved from another robot, it can be used in another team's hydropower dam to score additional points. So this means that you can use not only your own but the other team's water tank in the transport of the styrofoam balls over the wall, and you'll score the points. However, you should bear in mind that the rules say that you cannot place the water tank filled with the styrofoam balls on the field until after the robot has completed objective 1, because this will cause a penalty if you try to get a head start on objective 2 before the robot has completed objective 1. So by now you should be testing your robots and practicing the completion of the 2 objectives using objects that are similar in size and shape to game pieces that your robot will be interacting with during the robotics competition. Now we'll review 2 quick videos showing Vex Claw robots interacting with objects to give you an idea of the kind of practice you should be working on. that completes the first video, so now we'll move on to the second video. Okay, that completes the second video, so we'll get back to the presentation. Now I want to go over some of the penalties that are in the rules for this robotics competition. Now, if a human player places the water tank within the start zone before the team's robot has placed at least one water purification system in the wastewater treatment zone, that player's team will incur a 30-point penalty. Meaning that if you try to get a jump start on Objective 2 before the robot has completed Objective 1, then you will lose 30 points. After the start of the game, if a human player touches either a robot or a water tank filled with clean water that has already been placed in a start zone, that player's team will incur a 50-point penalty. So, meaning that you can't, once you place a water tank filled with styrofoam balls down in the start zone, you cannot pick it up again until after the robot has gotten it, taken it to the hydropower dam, emptied it, and then brought it back and placed it back in the start zone to be refilled. So additional rules are that, 1, only the materials that were sent with the current robotics kits are allowed to be used in the construction of the robot. No additional pieces can be added to the robot, which includes leftover parts from previous robotics competitions. So if you have any leftover robotics parts from previous years or any other parts laying around, you cannot use them in constructing your robot. Only only the pieces that we sent in the robotics kit for this competition can be used in the construction of this year's robots. Each robotics round is 2 minutes and 30 seconds long. So teams will earn an additional 10 points if the robots return to their original starting positions at the end of the challenge when the 2 minutes and 30 seconds are up. Now, here is the robotics field obstacle for the middle school robotics competition, which is a wooden ramp. The ramp is a long trapezoidal prism with the following dimensions. So the height of the ramp is 3 inches. The short base, which is shown here in the middle from the top view, is 1 foot and 3 1/16 inches long. The long base is 1 foot and 10 7 inches long, and the total length of the ramp from one side to the other of the field is 5 feet and 11.5 inches. Alright, that's all I have for today. Thank you for attending, and if you have any questions, you can chat with me live on CSTEM Break right now, or contact me as needed via my email at techadmin@cstem.org. And other than that, I'll see you again for our final workshop on April 12th, 2014. Thank you.
All right, so hi everyone, this is Shauna Smith again. This is our final creative writing and filmmaking workshop. So we're going to be doing one of my favorite parts, which is finalizing the documentary film. So as you remember, the creative writing challenge for this year for CSTEM is to develop an action research documentary for your peers regarding shortages of water and or energy. As I've gone over each workshop, you know, elementary is going to be focused on one aspect, middle schools are focused on a different aspect, and then high schools are focused on another aspect. So at this point, you should have already planned, collected your data, observed, written your report, actually reflected on it and evaluated everything. And so at this point, you should have all of your materials ready to edit and finalize your documentary film in preparation for our big presentation next month at the National CSTEM Challenge in Houston. So, as I mentioned, the film editing process is one of my favorite places, and one of my favorite video and filmmaking teachers says it's a magical place where you breathe life into your work. So you do all this hard work to write your story, capture the video footage and the photographs that you really need to get the essence of what you're trying to communicate. And now you bring it all to your computer and you start editing. And you know, for lack of better words, this really is where the magic happens, because you start piecing it together to visualize your entire vision for what this action research project means to you, what it means to your community, and you really start to piece it together so that you can share your passion for the topic with others. So you had taken your report from your data, you have your thesis, you have your reasons and your claims that appeal to the audience as to why they should be motivated to do something about it, and that is backed up by your facts and your examples, which is the data that you collected to support. So regardless of the specifics of your topic related to this challenge, you need to formulate your documentary in a way where there is this call to action. There is a problem. We need your help. You need to be aware of these things. Here's what we found. So, you know, this is where you are presenting the viewer with all of these important things that you uncovered in your investigation, and you are putting it in a package so that not only do they know what's going on, but you are providing them with an opportunity to be inspired to make a change. So with film editing, there are lots of different techniques, lots of different principles. If you download this PowerPoint, I do have some internet links in the notes section so that you can go and watch some of these videos that explain these different techniques and principles. But essentially, once you put together all of your video footage in the software, you can start weaving it and piecing it together in a variety of ways that can enhance what you are trying to communicate. And so one of the first techniques is a B-roll. And so that's where you've recorded audio, say from an interview, or one of your fellow students on your team is actually recording their voice and talking about the issue. And then you have video footage that's playing alongside that interview or narration. So, you know, B-roll means that you don't have to be showing the person who's talking all the time. You can have them talking on one layer and then video footage of the river or the bayou at the same time. So that's what a B-roll is. And establishing An establishing technique is basically where you use a wide shot of the setting or the scene. So if you're talking about your local neighborhood, then take a nice wide shot of the neighborhood and use that to set the stage, to set the scene for what you're talking about, so that the viewer not only hears about the issue that you're talking about from your action research, but they see where it's happening. It's not just a house, it's a house in this neighborhood, or it's not just a school, it's a school in this neighborhood in this city. So you can really establish the context for what you're discussing. Another technique is changing the scene, and that's where you're kind of creating a flow. So you're not ending abruptly with the first part and then moving directly into the second part. You're creating this flow to link the scenes together and to have continuity, which is similar in your writing. You always want to have sentences that flow from one topic to the next so that the reader can easily move through the ideas. Same is true here in visual film editing. You want to visualize the movement from the first part of the topic to the second part. Another thing to consider are cuts. And there are three main types. There's match cut, jump cut, and cutaway. And so match cut, that's basically where you are filming the same action but from two different angles. So for this, you would have to have two cameras set up, perhaps one on the side, such as this image here of the flutist and the trumpet player, or you would also have another camera set up in front of them, and so you could edit between the two different angles, and that helps you show a seamless progression. It helps you show the detail of what's going on, and sometimes it can actually add energy and emphasize what you're talking about. It makes it a little bit more exciting when you can show different angles of the same thing. But if you didn't have two cameras set up, don't worry about it, because you can use jump cuts and you can use cutaways. And so with a jump cut, you can use two shots that are similar, similar in position, but they can move from, say, left to right or the beginning to the end. And so it makes the viewer immediately be drawn in, and it attracts their attention, and it can kind of be used to speed up the progression of something. Like say if we're videotaping a seed growing into a plant, we're not going to want to sit there for days upon days upon days to watch it. But we can use jump cuts to quickly show that progression within a matter of 30 seconds. Another cut editing technique is called the cutaway. So you can emphasize an action, an event, a participant up close, and then you can cut away to the larger scene. So you can emphasize somebody's face during an interview or upon seeing the pollution and the trash in their local river or bayou, and then you can zoom back out and show the entire river or the entire bayou. And so that really emphasizes emotion of seeing the pollution in that case. Again, there are some links at the notes section of this PowerPoint if you download it, and you can go and watch some short videos that can discuss more detail about these techniques. Another one, transitions and effects. First let me say that the software that we have access to has all kinds of transitions and effects built in. And, it's really fun and it's really neat, but you don't want to overwhelm the viewer with an overload of using every single transition or effect. So you want to make sure that you're choosing transitions and effects that make sense, but also add to what you're trying to communicate. Because if you're doing a whole bunch of flashy business and you're editing, then the viewer is going to kind of lose sight of the important message of your actual documentary. So choose these wisely. Some of the basic ones that are very, very effective, most of the professional documentary filmmakers and even the big blockbuster movie makers use these 3 basic transitions. So the first one is fade from into black. Just really simple. At the end of a scene, fading to black, and then fading from black into the next image or the next scene. And it creates a nice, easy to understand transition from scenes. It also can kind of visually add closure to one aspect of the idea that you're communicating, and then it tells the viewer, and here's a new aspect. So visually, it's very easy to understand the fades. There's also dissolve, where you can slowly transition between 2 different scenes or 2 different shots. And that's used a lot to easily transition from one scene to the next. It can also emphasize the similarity between the 2 scenes. In this picture here that you see on Dissolve, you can see that it can kind of make a connection between the dancers and the musician who is playing the music that they're dancing to. So sometimes it makes sense to create a dissolve to make those connections between scenes. Also, another basic transition that is used in documentary film is the wipe. And so basically it just kind of does almost like a page turn from left to right, or you see the next scene start to creep in from one side to transition. It's definitely not my favorite transition. I personally prefer the fade to black and the dissolve because it's more professional looking, but the wipe can add some energy or action to your documentary if you think it's appropriate for what you're communicating at that time. Film editing software. We are fortunate to be in a time where there are tons of free video editing software available to us now. The main video editing software for PC users, so if you're running Windows operating systems on your computer, then you can easily access Windows Movie Maker. And like I said, it's free. It's very easy to understand. Tons of tutorials available. If you download this PowerPoint, I do have links to tutorials, video resources, and a lot of other things to help get you started in Movie Maker if it's new to you. So that's all in the notes section of this PowerPoint slide. But basically, I mean, you import your videos and your photos. You add in your music, your soundtrack, or your narrated audio, and you can even use your webcam and capture yourself talking through your webcam and edit the video right there. There are themes and different transitions that you can use, much like I just talked about, the fade to black, the dissolve, and then your video files and your photo files will start to appear here, and you can start clicking and dragging them around. You can clip, edit, and preview everything all right here. And then once you're done, you save it, and you got to make sure they're saving it in the right file format. Because you want it to be viewable online and on other people's computers. And again, all of that information is in the tutorial links at the bottom in the notes of this PowerPoint slide. For Mac users, you're probably going to be using iMovie, and it has all of the same features of Movie Maker. It just looks a little different. And so you're going to come in, import your videos and your photos. You can drag and drop them up here to your storyboard, they call it, and then you can come down here and you can actually do some editing. You can record directly over things, you can clip and crop, you can edit some of the audio and do like just basic editing features, and you can add subtitles and all of those different things, and then of course create your transitions. Again, I definitely recommend using fade to and from black and doing some simple dissolves. Once you have made some edits, you can preview it here in the viewer, and then again you make sure that you save it appropriately, and very easy to use. And again, if you download this PowerPoint, there are some links in the notes for tutorials, resources, and different examples of how to do some cool stuff with it. So, your action research plan is simple. You are finalizing your documentary film. You've done all the hard work, so now you get to do the fun stuff and piece it together and make your vision come to life. So you need to gather all of your files, all your video footage, your photographs, scans of newspapers, whatever kind of data and visual information you've collected. You need to gather all of your audio files. You need to decide if you're going to add music, like a soundtrack, to the back, or quietly in the background of your documentary film. I do caution you, if you are going to use music, make sure that the music is appropriate, that it complements the idea that you're trying to communicate. You don't want it to be distracting, and most importantly, you want it to be in the background. You want the sound to be balanced so that we can still hear the narration. We can still hear the interviewee talking about this important concept that you're trying to communicate. And then you're going to edit it. So using either Movie Maker for PC or iMovie for Mac, you're going to piece everything together, edit it nicely so that your communication of your action research really shines through. And remember, this is for your peers. So get them excited about this topic. Show them what's going on and show them what they can do. And, above all else, if you write it clearly, if you put it together nicely in a video, you're really going to make an impact, and you're really going to inspire not just your peers, but your whole community. We are going to have our CSTEM competition next month in Houston, so I really look forward to seeing all of you guys. I can't wait to see the results of your action research, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys present your documentary films, and just so totally excited. If you have any questions, if you need any last-minute help, please feel free to send me a message on CSTEM Break. You can make a blog post and cry out for help, or you can just send me a message directly there, and I would love to help you out and get you back on track. So have an awesome weekend, and I will see you next month.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 6th part of our CSTAM challenge. My name is Alicia Garcia here from the Houston Center for Photography. So let's get started and look at where we are on the chart. We're way far to the right. We're in cycle 6, artifact production. That sounds a little scary, artifact production. What it really means is we are on a 4-step process. We were beginning the prototype, you made a prototype, now artifact production and finalization. Those are 4 steps from cycles 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this is a more finalized rough draft, but it's not necessarily you finishing your project just yet. So don't feel like you're pressured to work really fast. Stay at the pace that you need to go at, and everything will be just fine. So let's develop your photographic project solution, and I'm sure you've been working really hard to do this. So you all know your challenges. We've gone over it many times, and I'm sure you're so familiar with it, you're now encountering specialized problems. And again, you feel free to submit a question if you have some issues, even teachers. If there's an issue going on, let me know, because a lot of those issues will be project specific to the type of photographs you're taking. So this is a question I get asked all day, every day. People come into the Houston Center for Photography and they say, how do I take better photos? And again, there's a question mark and an exclamation mark. Some people get frustrated. I don't want you to be frustrated. So my phrase I'm going to tell you is, let's get fancy. Let's do some fancy tricks that are very simple, and they're all done simply with your camera. There's nothing that's additional that's needed. I mean, in the next workshop, we'll talk a little bit more about lighting, now that you're getting closer and closer to what you're doing. But let's talk about how we can make a better photograph. So I highly suggest that either you put this on pause, you look at this video later, but you write down these suggestions. These suggestions will be very helpful, and I use these for my students at the Houston Center for Photography when we talk about making the photo look finished. So number 1, if you read a photo book, if you have ever seen anything with the term rule of thirds, some cameras divide the photograph up into 3 sections vertically and 3 sections horizontally to give us a total of 9 rectangles. So if you can count there's 9 rectangles. And if you notice, I have a little tree frog. It looks really cute. This tree frog is an example of a successful photo with rule of thirds. The photo is successful because of this one very important element, and make sure you write this down. When you divide the photograph up, you're going to see that the vertical and horizontal lines are going to intersect. A successful photograph puts the subject where a vertical and horizontal line intersect. So for a lot of you, if you don't have a grid, that just means you're taking photos, say, not dead center. It means always being a little bit off to the bottom right, bottom left, top right, top left. That frog is in the very center of this photograph. Or that this lighthouse also is not dead center. It's very important to make sure that we don't try and put this dead center, because some photographs that are dead center are not very appealing to all subject matter. So we just have to be careful. And look, that lighthouse has an intersection. It has 2 intersections of horizontal lines on that nice tall vertical line. So that is a very successful photograph. So the more you shoot, and I'm sure there's tons of you that have a lot of fun when you do this. Well, sometimes there will be people that think that now because I've taken so many photos, it's becoming easier, which is a good thing. But when it becomes easier, some people try and overcomplicate the photograph. So I want you to relax and know that if it's becoming easier, it's not because you're carrying less. It's because you've been practicing, and that's a great thing. So number 2 is simplify the scene. This is a beautiful photo of a parachute, and there are 2 people in front of that parachute. I don't need to have 25 people in this shot to know how big the parachute is in comparison to these people. I just need to see a very small amount so I can see that balance. Again, keeping it simple. We don't need to overload the viewer. Another thing you can do is fill the frame. So when we say frame, that's a term we use when we say the camera is up against your eye and everything you can see through the camera is the frame. It is not the frame that you're putting your photograph in. So when you're shooting, the frame is what we can see through the lens. So filling the frame is incredibly important because it speaks to a really big history of photography. Before photography, there was painting. And when you fill the frame, your photo looks very, very painterly. And that's a big compliment because we didn't spend that much time taking a photograph as someone that spent hours painting. That's a very big compliment. But what we can say is it's not just wheat fields or landscapes that can fill a frame. It can be any subject matter you can fill a frame with. There are plenty of people that shoot for Rolling Stone, Cosmopolitan, Elle, Sports Illustrated. They fill the frame, and it's what they're known for, and it makes for very, very intriguing photographs. So I would highly suggest that you guys experiment with this suggestion. It'll be really beneficial for you. Aspect ratio. So a lot of people are familiar with aspect ratio and have no idea. So aspect ratio, you've probably seen the funny aspect ratio, which is people, when they travel to Europe, they show you photos where they're kicking the Leaning Tower of Pisa. They're holding the Eiffel Tower in their hands. That's a funny way to show how something so big can fit in the palm of your hand. Or you could also, as this photo shows, aspect ratio is how close an object is to the camera. So in the background, behind that mist, there's a mountain. It's a big hill. Do you see it? Do you see that the boat is much closer to the camera, and therefore it looks really large? So let's say you're taking photos of a water bottle, because we're talking about clean water access, or whatever your subject matter might be for your group. If you want to make that water bottle look really important, put it closer to the camera. That's going to make a very successful photograph. And 9 times out of 10, when people first start shooting, they don't explore in a very close ratio. So get up close to the object and look at it and have some fun with it. And if things are not as important, maybe you should put them further away from the camera. That way, the viewer or the portfolio reviewer at the competition knows what they should be looking at. I think that'll help you. Number 5. It's very similar to the rule of thirds. We call this avoid the middle. So this is a beautiful icy photograph. One thing that's going on here that's really important, the frog and this man are both looking into the photograph. They're not looking out of the photograph. So it keeps the viewer engaged in looking at this photograph. It looks very dynamic and very pretty. So we don't ever want someone to be looking outside your photograph, staring at your frame that you have built out of all your materials. We want them looking inside. It helps people spend more time with your photograph. And a really good example is, this is one of my really good friends, David. He shoots for National Geographic. David says that to get this photograph and to get the successful images he takes, It doesn't happen like magic. He takes a lot of them and he plays with the balance of where he puts his subject. And it's just a lot of work, but he thinks it's very rewarding. So there you have it. A National Geographic photographer is telling you, you can absolutely do this. Just balance things out and work really, really hard. Again, in photo language, I'm sure you've heard the phrase leading lines. Leading lines are important in case maybe you shot a photo and it was raining, or here it's snowing. Guess what? There's a guy way back there to the left of that tree. I can only find him because that fence guides my eye all the way to where that man is. The leading lines are extremely helpful and keep this photo nice and simple. Again, keeping it simple, but making sure that I don't miss out on the subject matter. So we can do that, and that can be really helpful. There are diagonal lines in photographs, and there's a lot of diagonal lines in this photograph. The use of diagonal lines keeps you staring at the subject longer. So we have the diagonal lines of the telephone wires and power lines, the tree lines, all the texture, the reins for the horses, and even the horses' bodies. It just keeps me looking at the horses the entire time. It's a wonderful photograph. So again, make sure you have some types of entry points for our photograph so that my eye goes straight to whatever you're documenting. And that'll help keep the viewer interacting with your photograph for a really long time. Space to move. You guys probably won't have this as an issue, but I give this as a helpful hint for any of you that after this project, you decide you love taking photos. So space to move is important because this car is moving. We can all see that background is fuzzy and the car is moving forward. It's going left to right. Space to move is where I know that there's some road left in front of the car for it to continue driving. You'll hear people say, this photo makes me feel sick. I don't feel right. It makes me feel claustrophobic. That's when there isn't any road in front of the car, and it just makes us feel like the car is hitting the edge of the photo. You want to give the viewer, we said, the leading line into the photograph, and to allow some time to have your eye leave the photograph. So you might not experience this one for this project, but it's a good thing to know for future projects. Let's see here, number 9, backgrounds. Backgrounds can make or break a photograph. I'm sure some of you have been shooting and you realize, oh, there was something that was in the background. This is awful. And then you took the object out, retook the photo, and all of a sudden the photo was immensely better. Well, that's what we want. I want to make sure that you guys have backgrounds that are not distracting, and that can be a background like this that's very simple, or that could mean that everything in the background is intentional, that nothing looks like an accident, and that can also be a very successful photograph. So we can go from being really simple to everything looking like it was intentionally placed for a reason. If it doesn't look like it's supposed to be there, that might be a problem. And last but not least, when people say, how many photos should I take? I keep telling you, take lots and lots of photos. I am a fine artist and event photographer. Every now and then, I'll shoot a really heavy event. And if I'm there for 8 or 10 hours, my job is to make sure that every hour I am taking about 200 photographs. So that's a lot of photos. I'm not asking you to take 200, I'm asking you to take 50 photos. That's less than 1 photo a minute. And sometimes, when you play sports, you have to stretch and you have to prepare your body for what you're about to do. Well, in photography, sometimes we have to prepare our eye to know what we're about to shoot, and so to stretch out and get all ready to go shoot, you should take a bunch of photos and then you're ready. So warm your body up, get your eyes ready, and try and take as many as you can in an hour, or you could do 25 photos in 30 minutes, whichever works for you. It'll get the creative juices flowing. So I'm really excited that now we get to talk about these 10 rules, and they are absolutely for color and black and white photos, and we'll see how you guys tackle this within the project. So let's all continue to the chat, see if any of you have any questions or comments or concerns about these rules, and we'll see you there. And I'm really excited to now get to this phase of the project. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to C-STEM Challenge, Sculpture. I am Sarah Trotty and I'm happy to work with you today on some of the final steps in our C-STEM Sculpture Challenge. Water Energy Nexus is our theme. We're now on cycle 5, and at this point students should be ready to complete the prototypes based on their research and strategy. You should have already started. So this is where you should be in your project. Let's talk about completing that sculpture prototype. By cycle 5, students should have collected and sorted and decided on the objects to use to construct their sea turtle sculpture. Remember that the elementary students are using found paper, the middle school students are using found plastic containers, and the high school students are using found aluminum metals. Test the assemblage of these found objects to make them into creative sculpture. First, the students should decide on the best form and begin permanently securing the found materials for the sea turtle. Be flexible. Make adjustments to come up with a desirable 3D sea turtle shape. The basic form must be completed by the next cycle, which is just 2 weeks away, so that there is time to complete the surface and everything else that's being done. And you will use the same materials to create color for these. Don't forget the theme. Elementary students are constructing an endangered sea turtle sculpture in the form of transportation that improves access to clean water or energy. So your turtle will help access to clean water or energy. And the sculpture that the elementary schools use will be recycled materials, reused paper materials at that. Here are some examples. We've looked at this one where cardboard is a good material to use. Containers, cardboard containers, boxes are also very good to use. The middle school theme is a little different. Middle school students will construct an endangered sea turtle sculpture in the form of transportation that conserves clean water and our energy. Not uses, but conserves it. Makes the best use of it. To make the sculpture, middle schoolers will use recycled and reused plastic containers or material. Here are a few examples. You can see here that plastic coat hangers and spoons and containers, everything that's plastic is acceptable for the middle school. This particular slide shows how color is added using plastic materials. So a basic armature made with plastic containers can be covered with smaller colored pieces of colored plastic containers. The high school theme is also different. High school students will construct an endangered sea turtle sculpture in the form of transportation that efficiently utilizes clean water and or energy. Note the difference in the purpose. This is an efficient use of it. The other was saving clean energy, and the first was using it. To make the sculptures, high schoolers will use recycled and reused aluminum materials such as cans and other aluminum materials. Here's an example of a sculpture that's made with found pieces of metal. And these can be glued together with various forms of glue, especially those glues that work to add most materials. Each school's endangered sea turtle sculpture masterpiece must not exceed 4 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet. That's 4 feet wide, 4 feet tall, or 4 feet deep. You should come close, certainly. You want to make them nice and large, but they should not go over this minimum size, 4 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet. All sculptures must be accompanied with a typed one-page report and a scaled engineering design of the sculpture masterpiece on 11 by 17 graph paper. So the graph paper that was provided will be used to make a sketch of this design masterpiece. And you want to make that an outline drawing, so it's an engineering design on the graph paper. And of course your report is important because that report talks about the sculpture, how it relates to the theme, and how it conserves or utilizes energy through water. Teams will also use 3D printing design in order to create a sea stem logo that must be attached to their final endangered sea turtle sculpture. The dimensions of the 3D design must not exceed 3 inches by 3 inches by 3 inches. And this logo design is a part of another sea stem activity. Note, to create surface color for your final sculpture, you have to use, again as was mentioned, the found materials in the same medium. No paint is allowed on any of the sculptures, on the elementary sculptures, or the middle school sculptures, or the high school sculptures. All of the sculptures must also be self-standing and well balanced. That's part of your criteria for success. We talked about the research, we've talked about turtles, how they would work, creating these sculptural forms, and so you want to make sure that all of this is involved in your work. Finally, you will have a wonderful sea turtle sculpture that you can share with all for your Sea STEM challenge. We have now completed the Sea STEM sculpture challenge, and if there are questions, I'll be ready to talk with you live or chat with you live on Sea STEM Break following this video. And let me remind you that the next workshop, Workshop 6, is April 12th. Good morning and welcome to C-STEM Challenge Mural. I'm Sarah Trotty and I'm happy to work with you this morning as we go through the series of steps in creating your mural. Water Energy Nexus. This is the theme for our murals. And we are in the 5th cycle, and during this cycle students will complete the prototypes based on their research and strategy. So we're actually making the mural today. We're actually painting the mural at this point. I show again, and I will review some of this for those of you who might be new to the C-STEM Challenge and for others who want a review. The mural that you see here, which helps us to understand composition, is found on the campus of Texas Southern University. As you can see, there are simple images, large images that catch our attention. Color is used also to catch our attention. And there are secondary images that help to tell the story of the mural. And you can see here that nature and water is a part of this theme. So let's review a little bit in terms of the composition. Students have done the research on ideal landscapes where energy has made a positive impact. They've worked together to create several compositions using generators and water treatment plants and other major components. They've incorporated schools or homes or cityscapes and rural community settings into their compositions. Again, we do want to keep the composition simple. We'll look at this example of the impact and the strength of nature. We'll look here at this one, which shows an old or antique water treatment plant, but you can see the simple process of water that is created by moving it and hence energy. This example again shows some cityscapes and how you can simplify those for your composition and to make the design interesting. We have done some of the research, but I want to look again at a few water treatment plants just in case. So if we'll think a little bit onto this site, and there are a number of water treatment plants that are generating lots of energy, as you can see here, from the very simple one as shown here on my left to this large dam with the water that runs over it to create energy. And any of these kinds of examples, and there are many that you can find if you go to this site, can be used to show some aspect of energy created through water for your compositions. Now, the design solution can also use geometry. We talked about that. So let's look at an example here where the animals in nature and the trees in nature have been changed to geometric patterns. And so mathematics, geometry plays a big role in C-STEM, and we want to incorporate some of those qualities into the work. So you can plan simple geometric patterns within the shapes that have been created. Let's review some of the group assignments. The first assignment is to construct the mural canvas, and we'll review that again later. Another group will work with research and reporting, while another begins to work on the small sketches that could be used in the final mural. Again, the sketches are reviewed, and the group helps to make those decisions, selections, and revisions, and then the mural is transferred to the white pre-painted canvas. Each school has a different topic pertaining to water energy nexus. The mural must be accompanied by a one-page typed short story that tells about this masterpiece, and it should be 12 font size and double spaced. So be sure to include your short story that's typed. It has to be accompanied with the mural. We want to review here the process of using the media, this particular case, the oil pastel. So we'll venture out just a few moments to look at the YouTube again on painting with oil pastels. You can visit this site yourself and look at all the examples here, but it does help to have.
Welcome back to another video tutorial brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. Today we're going to be using oil pastel. We're going to be drawing an apple. I'm going to start off by just drawing a shape for my apple. And I'm just going to use a basic red, a primary red. This apple is going to be a red apple. So I'm going to start off with a red color. And I'm just very loosely making the shape of that apple. I'm not trying to get the details perfect. I'm using very loose strokes with my hand. You can see the way that I'm holding the pastel. I'm just putting down information on the apple a little bit at a time. Now I know my light source is going to be coming from the upper left-hand side, so I'm going to go ahead and start putting in darker values a little bit on the bottom part of the apple. I'm just going to let that red be a little bit more intense on the bottom left-hand side of the apple. As I get close to the ridge that goes around the top of the apple, I'm going to stay away from that a little bit right now because it's where my highlight's going to go. I'm going to get a red-orange color and start making that red just a little bit more intense. Oil pastel techniques are very similar to colored pencil techniques. You're going to want to layer your colors and mix your colors, of course. You want to slowly build up the color so that it looks like paint. Taking your time is important. And if you, well, with colored pencils, you should outline last. If you like to outline with oil pastels, it's similar. You define the outline at the end. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow ochre, and I'm going to start to go over some of those colors. Yellow ochre is a lighter value, so I'm going to let it go up to the top of the ridge a little bit.
We're going to look a little bit at the second one just so you can get an idea.
Welcome back to part 2 of the oil pastel video tutorial brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. Last left, we were adding a little bit of yellow-green to the apple. That's going to make it look a little bit more natural. Now I'm going to go back over it, and I'm going to get a little bit heavier with my highlights at this point.
So you can see
I've built up the oil pastels to a point where the material is real thick on the surface, and I have a little bit more freedom to put those highlights on there with some heavy white. So I'm going to put some of those heavy highlights on there. I'm also going to take the white and bring it down and let some of the colors underneath blend with the white. That's going to give us a little bit more of a highlighted side. It's going to make our midtones feel a little bit more natural and make the transition from the highlights to the shadows a little bit more natural as well. Some of those highlights need to be completely white, make the apple look shiny.
The middle school will use acrylic paints, and we have another YouTube for that one. Let me just show you a little bit of that site, which you can go to yourself as well. And this one will show you how to blend the paint for sky and landscape.
From light to dark, and we'll should mix nice smooth transition from light blue to dark blue. And if it doesn't work, then I do another set of X's over that. So I just go over a second time with the axis and then the horizontal again. So I do it as many times as I have to, and but I'm not gonna show you that repeat again. And then I reach the horizon line, and that will be the end of the sky. And the beginning of the ocean. Now I use Mars Black and ultramarine blue and white, titanium white, and medium magenta. And I add a little bit of magenta to the ultramarine blue to make it more purple, and then a little bit of black to tone down the color. Now the blue is too bright, and the black will tone it down and make more a grayish color. And then I add water to make sure I get it nice and smooth, and so it doesn't dry on me too fast. And you will blend better the colors. Then I add white to make a lighter color, because this blue is too dark. Then I go from dark blue to the lightest blue by just adding different amounts of white to the paint. And I paint that over the dark blue of the sky. Now the blue of the sky is dry, so the colors don't blend. The clouds' colors don't blend with the blue of the sky.
All right, I want you to see just enough of that to kind of see how to mix the colors. In high school, we'll use both oil pastels and acrylic paint, and they can add other materials as well since it's mixed media. Now, let's just talk about assembling the canvas itself, this mural section that will make the canvas. Each team has been supplied with the appropriate material for the size canvas they need. Each canvas will be hemmed 1/2 inch all around, but they will all have a 2-inch hem at the top for holding the banner and attaching the banner to the space where it's on display. So you want to keep that in mind, and that would involve a little sewing. This shows the canvas material stretched out. The elementary school canvas will have one piece, of course, and you can see where we have the top that's about 2 inches folded under. There's a 1/2 inch folded first, and then the 2 inches, and then all around on the top and on the side rather, and the bottom of both sides, you will have a 1/2 inch, and that's stitched under, preferably by machine, but some people do hand stitching just as well. This shows measuring and carefully pressing the hem down first to make sure that it works. Okay, and then sewing it. High schoolers and middle schoolers have 2 pieces of material. They will first seam that material in the middle, 1/2 inch on both sides, and then the top across will be hemmed 2 inches, and then the 2 sides and the bottom will be 1/2 inch. So once you've hemmed this, you're ready to prepare the muslin to be a canvas itself. That means you have to add a gesso or a paint. We suggested you use house paint. Semi-gloss is fine, or just matte. But first put a layer of newspaper on the floor, lots of newspaper, then cover the newspaper with plastic bags, cleaner's bags, or trash bags will do. These layers should be wider than the muslin canvas so that you have plenty of room to allow the paint to go on and not mess up your floor. Lay the muslin canvas on top, front side up. Remember you hemmed it, so the back should show where the hem is. Put a very little paint on this brush first as you coat the first layer. This seals the muslin and allows it to absorb more paint later on. Be sure to cover the complete surface from top to bottom and side to side. After the first layer of paint is dry, add a second heavier layer of paint. Let that dry. A third coat is possible needed, because you want to make sure that the surface is smooth and even. Allow it to dry thoroughly, and you have a great canvas ready to transfer the mural composition. Okay, remember how important teamwork is. You've got the group that's constructed the canvas. You've got the group that's done the research. The group that's designed the composition based on the research of their team members. You got a team that's helping with the painting of the canvas itself, and may also help you with the transfer painting. You've got a team that's writing the summary of your mural theme, and so you are ready to go. We're going to move on now to what makes a great composition. So the rubric for evaluating the success of your mural. Certainly there should be a clear expression of the theme, water energy nexus. Then you should look to see that you unify the composition within the mural plan form. Clarity and execution of images. You want your images to be large enough to be seen, especially your major images, and close enough to see some of the detail. An effective application of the materials, whether it's oil pastels or acrylic paints, is also important. Using color to help draw attention to the mural, to relate the various areas, is also a quality to look for. And finally, craftsmanship in both the assemblage of the mural canvas and the use of the media. I'm going to go back just a little bit just to make sure that we can take a look at some murals, just to remind you of what they can look like. So we go back to the early mural itself. Now, back to what we were talking about for the evaluation. Large, simple shapes that would help send the theme that you're talking about. Secondary images that support this theme. A way to unify the color, whether it's complementary color or colors that are side by side that go together well. Simple, clear execution of the theme is what we're looking for. So we now have completed our mural challenge, and we are ready now to do the final presentation and report. So if you have questions, we are ready to chat at the completion of this video. And also after that, we want to remind you of the next workshop, Workshop 6, which is on April the 11th. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Roy Carter, and today we're going to go through the second to last geoscience overview of the CSTEM Challenge. And so this is the 5th workshop, and so the workshop is designed to be an overview of what we've covered so far in the past 4 workshops, and then also to get you prepared for the upcoming CSTEM Challenge, which is going to be in late April. So hopefully everybody has started on, so let's go to the next slide. And so yes, hopefully everybody has started on their prototyping of the design. And so right now, where everybody should be is they should definitely be in the construction of the prototype design, then also and hopefully ending up with that construction and going into an artifact. And an artifact is just basically going to be your final product here. So basically, you should be hopefully at the point where you're producing your final prototype, which will become your artifact. Then the artifact will be finalized in the last cycle. So therefore, just to go through the cycles again, we introduced the cycle, the CSTEM Challenge, to you early this year, late last year. And then one of the things that we were emphasizing back in like December, January was to begin the challenge of your activity and your research. And then in January, February, we were emphasizing that you should create your design solution and also begin your prototyping of your design. And now, hopefully everybody is at the construction of the prototype design and then also at the finalization of that prototype. So right now what we'll do, just for those who need some reminding, right now we're talking about so the Geoscience Challenge for all of those. Okay, so I'm going to just go through this problem real quick. Okay, so an exponentially growing population has resulted in rising demand for resources despite our limited clean water and energy supply. This has led to a global shortage in clean water and natural resources. In order to fulfill the demands and maintain the quality of life for the human race, there is a need to design smart and efficient ways to preserve and utilize our resources. Students will invent a technology or mechanism for recycled and reused materials and 3D printing technology that serve as a solution to clean water and energy shortages. The 3D printed object to be integrated into the invention must be a geometric shape and not exceed 3 inches by 3 inches by 3 inches. And so therefore what we are asking everybody who's going to have a submission for the Geoscience Challenge is that we're asking everybody to have their project submission accompanied on basically a scaled engineering design, I should say, of the invention on 11 by 17 inch graph paper. So basically what we're asking you to do is draw up your invention or your submission on graph paper. And so, but the overall dimension requirement for the overall invention, there is no actual dimension requirement. So we're asking you basically to have a physical object and also be able to draw that up. And so then also, last but not least, what we were asking people to do is have 2 team members from each school level. And so they must be able to collaborate and create a 5-minute oral presentation using Prezi to explain their Geoscience Challenge solutions. Okay, so one of the things I want to go over is just to review the previous CSTEM Geoscience trainings. And so as I said before, back in December 7th, and so also one of the things I want to emphasize to everybody here, if you might be a little behind, don't worry, you can always catch up. Okay, so therefore, go back and then review all of the trainings that were done previously. I also have the dates put up here, and also the trainings and what we've covered. So just in case you need a refresher course in what was covered in past trainings, feel free to go. They're available to you in your CSTEM in the CSTEM website. So I encourage everybody to go check and see what was done before. So just to review some of the geoscience trainings that we did. The first one was an introduction to geoscience. So basically what we discussed is what is geoscience and what does a geoscientist do? And because there's a number of different, because it's a very broad term, geoscience. And geoscience basically just means the study of the earth. And so as you can think, there's a ton of different scientists and categories underneath geoscience, everything from geologists to climatologists to meteorologists to hydrologists to geologists, geophysicists. So one of the things that we discussed also after an introduction to geoscience is some of the careers in geoscience. And then in the second training back in January, we discussed some of the potential avenues of investigation, or we just kind of brainstormed and went through some potential solutions to this geoscience challenge. Now the third training was how to create a solution and a working prototype. So if you're stuck on what to do in terms of creating a solution, I would definitely recommend going back and looking at the second training and also the third training. And then I'll have my contact information at the end of the speech, but you can always feel free to contact me also. And then last but not least, since we are requiring every team to have a 3D printed object, what we did in the fourth training, so that was a few weeks ago, was to do an overview of the 3D printing techniques. What is 3D printing, first off? And then also some of the current uses of 3D printing. And then also one of the things that I wanted to do was have a check-in also with everybody, with all the team members. So as I said before, and I want to emphasize this, because every team should be in the creation/finalization mode of their solution. And so without giving you too much in terms of like how to do it, one of the things that I want to just emphasize to everybody is that there is no correct answer in terms of how to create this solution. And so one of the things that I want to emphasize to everybody is don't be afraid to try something new, be creative, and try something. Try anything. And then also don't be afraid to go back and then redo something. And so some of the potential avenues for investigation are things such as portable water desalination, so access to clean water, things such as reusing or recycling clean water and energy resources, such as oil and gas fracking. Then also, and maybe you can investigate how to reduce the amount of waste needed for energy production. And so in terms of how to make the prototype, as we said before, we're going to require all the teams to have a drawing or a mock-up, we call that a mock-up, of their prototype. So please use sketch paper and a pencil, don't use a pen, and then try to sketch your prototype from multiple viewpoints. And so that will give you a better idea of how it fits into your overall solution. And so complete a more detailed drawing using graph paper, and then try to make the model. And then one thing that I recommend you doing is that you make the model out of paper or foam first. And so therefore you can get a basic understanding of the size and the structure of your prototype. And so then last but not least, take a look at your prototype and see how it fits into your overall solution. And then if it needs adjustments, feel free to go back and then readjust as needed. And then I want to emphasize to you at the end, at the bottom there, is that if you first don't succeed, make sure to try again. Try as many times as possible until you get it to where you actually want it. Because odds are is that your first prototype definitely will not be your best prototype. And most of the time you'll need to do multiple prototypes before you get something that actually works for you. And then last but not least, once that prototype is finished, be sure to complete the assignment and put the drawing on 11 by 17 inch graph paper. So one of the things I want to ask of everybody is, then I asked this in the last presentation, but I want to make sure that everybody is doing okay with the Geoscience Challenge. So we should be towards the end, as you can see, the testing of the ideas and the construction of the prototype. So I'm asking this of everybody who's listening to me, so feel free to contact myself or the CSIM staff if you need help. So I'm just curious about where everybody's at in the process, and feel free to contact me. And let me give you my contact information, which is roycarter@chevron.com. So as I said before, feel free to contact me anytime. I'm not going to be with you too long today because I want everybody to give everybody time to work on their actual prototype. So we've also included some additional teacher training resources and some additional resources that you can use. Feel free to download this presentation and use that as you see fit. And then also I'll be staying online for the next 15 to 20 minutes in order to answer any questions. So therefore, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now, or feel free to contact me. And as I said before, my contact information is roycarter@chevron.com. Thank you, everybody, and have a good weekend. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to today's lesson on energy types and transfer. Before we get started, I'd just like to mention that I've uploaded the PDF to the File and Media library up here. On the top, there's a little icon with a folder with some arrows pointing in either direction. You can click on that and scroll down the list and find CSTEM energy types and transfer. Go ahead and either click on that now or after the lesson, and you can follow along with me, or after the lesson for future reference on this lesson and what we've been teaching. All right, so let's get right on ahead. As we discussed, these are the different units we've covered so far. Just to do a little bit of recap, we discussed the introduction to the Mind's Eye system. We had then Unit 1 of continuous learning and improvement, applied system thinking, the variable force and motion, and now we're on electrical energy and energy transfer. Last week, if you recall, we talked about the variable of force and motion. Talked about inertia and a few good things. I guess if this was more of an interactive lesson, I'd ask you what you remember about last week. But, or it wasn't last week, it was a few weeks ago. Last lesson, I should say. To cover on that. So this week we'll be talking about electrical energy and energy transfer. All right, so in this lesson we always like to start out with a couple things that we cover in this PowerPoint, and those two things are, first is I can understand what energy is, and I can understand the difference between chemical, electrical, and mechanical energy. So keep in mind these two questions, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to understand what they are and identify them. Keep this in mind: what energy is, and the difference between chemical, electrical, and mechanical. Okay, so we're going to start out with just a simple definition of energy, and that is energy is an indirectly observed quantity which comes in many forms. Well, so the forms that they come in are these right here: electrical, light, chemical, heat, and mechanical. Now these aren't all the forms, but these are some of them, or most of the ones we'll encounter in this lesson. So as you go throughout your day, maybe think about these different types of energy and identify things that we see each day, like a light bulb, for example. Bam! What kind of energy is that? Oh, well, that's light. What kind of energy is it when we eat food? That's chemical. Breaking it down. Heat energy, where do you see that? Maybe on a stove, or mechanical energy. Where would we encounter mechanical energy? All right, just think about that. Energy transfer. So, as we mentioned before, there's different types of energy. Transfer is when that energy is being transferred from one form to another. So here's two examples right here with the sun going to the carrot and the ice cream going to the bike rider. The first, you can see the light energy. Grab my little pointer here. The light energy from the sun is transformed and stored as chemical energy into food. So light energy is being transferred to chemical energy. And this one, you have a person's eat food. You could even put that carrot over here too if you want. If you don't like eating ice cream, I don't know. I prefer ice cream. So when you have this chemical energy, and it's stored over here to the person, which is still chemical energy, but then it's adjusted down to the bicycle, which is creating mechanical energy, or moving the muscles. That's also mechanical, in a way. So there you have it. Light energy to chemical, and then chemical to mechanical. You can think of a lot of different examples in the world today. Are there any few that come to mind? If there are, just write a few in the comments in the chat box after this thing. Or as we go, just say, you know what, I think that a good example of chemical to, or light to chemical is this, or mechanical to heat is this. Just show me some examples. Let's talk about it. All right. Now, continuing on to energy transfer, here's two more slides we can, or two more examples we can talk about. This, for example, using a stove top to boil water transforms electrical energy into heat. Electrical into heat. This one, gasoline, which is a good example of chemical energy, transfers into mechanical energy when the car runs. The wheels are turning, we're going down the road. That's mechanical. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that heat is also referred to as thermal energy. That'll be an important question on the quiz. I'm just kidding, we don't have any quizzes, but that'd be funny if we did. All right, now energy byproducts. A byproduct of most energy transfer and transformation is heat. So this is kind of like, let me just go back one. Like as this car is going down the road, yes, it's mechanical energy, but there's also something else being emitted. What is that? Heat, right? It's a byproduct. Lots of times when, because when energy transferred, there's a little bit of heat involved. For example, like a light bulb, you take like an incandescent light bulb, you plug it in, and it's not just giving out light, but it's also generating heat right here. That's something to keep in mind too. A lot of times, if you just think it's just light, and you were put that in a wrong location, you have to also be prepared that that's going to be hot. You can't just grab it. I don't know how many of you try to unscrew a light bulb after it's been on all day. How'd that go? All right. What types of energy do you see? Okay, work within your team to identify at least 4 examples of energy transfer and transformation. So here's kind of an example. Here's an example question you can do with your class, if you'd like. As for right now, I would just say, if you want to, just post a comment at the bottom at the end of this, or right now, and identify one of those 4 types of energy transfer, which are, we could just go back to the slide. Bam, not that one. I'm always one off. Okay, electrical, light, chemical, heat, or mechanical. Any of these, identify those. We can talk about it. That was too far ahead again. Okay. So, write it in the comment. I'll talk about it. All right, now here's a cool exercise too. You can basically chart out the path of energy from one thing to the next. So like, does the tire go to the wheel end, or the wheel end go to the tire? Does the battery go to the speed controller or the motor? That's a fun activity to do. And there's kind of, this is another example of activity you can do. Basically, you're saying this, what kind of energy is this charger generating, and to what kind of energy is this? And then what kind of energy is your battery? What kind of energy does it have? And what's the transfer to the speed controller? Is it mechanical to electrical, chemical to light? What is it? What's happening? All right. Now, here's just a continuation of this slide. What does the speed controller to the motor, is that electrical to mechanical, or is that chemical to mechanical? Is this light to chemical? All right, now the next section of this lesson is on volts, amps, and watts. Okay, so we'll cover these 2 parts on this section. What are volts and amps and watts, and the relationship between those things. Here's the definition of a volt. I'll read this. The standard unit of electromotive force, the difference of potential that would carry 1 amp of current against 1 ohm of resistance. So this is a good definition of voltage. voltage is equal to the pressure and difference in the two tanks. So volts is a difference in the pressure difference between the two. So imagine that pressure going through there. What's that pressure going to be? That's your voltage. And now amp is the standard base, is the flow of electrons. It's your current, your flow. So when you look at this, yeah, we'll use this in electrons or energy. They're what makes up electricity. They're measured in amps. So in this diagram, you say amps are equal to the rate of flow. So the rate are your amps. Voltage is the pressure. Amps are the flow, the rate of the flow. Okay, how many, yeah, the rate of the flow. How many of those electrons are going through there? All right, now wattage is the standard unit of power equivalent to the joule per second. Now you're probably like, what is that? Now watts is a measure of work that the motor can do at the specific. So watts, a good example, are, yeah, watts is just the amount of work you can do. So how many of these electrons are there in there? How much work can it do? So I like this. Watts can be converted to horsepower. Great. And now here's a formula. W equals V times A. Watts equals volts times amps. Amps. And amps. That would be funny. That would be silly. How many amps are there? Okay. If any two parts of the formula are known, the other two can be solved. So this is actually pretty helpful because if you know how many voltage your battery has, and you know how many watts your battery has, then you can figure out how many amps it has, or vice versa, whatever. Now lastly, we'll talk about batteries. Basically what it is and how battery functions. A battery is a device consisting of one or more electrochemical cells that convert stored chemical energy into electrical energy. So chemical, mostly chemical. There are two types of batteries. Now, there's the disposable batteries and the rechargeable batteries. We've all seen the difference of these. The difference mainly being the one can be recharged and one cannot. And they come in all shapes and sizes. Yeah, I should really use my pointer. Look at that. Look at how small those are. Those are actually pretty big compared to other batteries. All right, now here we go. It contains two types of materials, half are positive, half are negative, and the conduit by which the electrons flow between. Positive, negative, bam. Now, when charging, the negative materials oxidize, consuming electrons, and the positive release electrons. When in use, the positive material is reclaiming electrons back from the negative material. The imbalance between the two compromises the potential energy of the battery. Here's a diagram of a battery. You have the positive terminal, the anode, which is usually zinc in here. Then you have the ion conducting separator, the outer casing, the cathode, which is manganese, and the protective cap, and the negative terminal. So you could make it a simple battery with zinc and manganese, which I don't know if we do in this lesson, but we actually use a potato and tank two little strips of zinc and copper and make a battery. Now the benefits of using batteries, basically just think, can you think of any benefits using batteries versus other sources of power? And what are some limitations that batteries have? Just write a comment in the comment section at the end of this or right now as you're thinking about it. Now here's just a simple example that we use in, you can use in a class using a multimeter and your robot to tell what your voltage is. Pretty simple. Again, like I said, this is in the file and media library, so if you'd like to go do this, go ahead and do this voltage test. You can also test the RPM. And there you have it. So I think that's all we have for today. Again, if you have any questions, comment in the comment section below, or you can just contact my email at tlines@mymind'seye.com, or give me a call at the office. I'd love to talk to you about any questions about Mind's Eye Robotics or about the lesson that we discussed today. All right, have a great day. Bye.
Hello and welcome to today's 3D printing workshop. My name is JD Crumney. I will be leading today's workshop, so let's get started. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about today is some troubleshooting advice for the 3D models. Now, an issue that I have seen in a few of the 3D models for printing is that the models contain flat surfaces that do not form the side of a closed figure. So, as you can see in this solid right here, I have an open solid, which is considered open because the surfaces that make up its sides, all of its sides have no depth. Because you can picture it as like a container with an open lid, and when the 3D printer reads something like that, it thinks of it as an open solid, and it can't print an open solid. It can only print closed solids, like the one pictured here at the top, where you have a closed box, closed cylinder, and so on and so forth. So these flat surfaces create what the 3D printer will view as an open solid, and it can't print. Like I said, it can't print those. And I'd also like to show an example in SketchUp. So shown here, you can see that I have a container type object shown here, which is a triangular prism, and as you can see, there's no top. It's just an open solid. And the problem with this is that these surfaces right here are flat when it has an open side, and the 3D printer can't do anything with flat surfaces like these sides and this bottom. So all solids have to be closed, meaning this has to be a closed figure. Okay, so let's continue with the presentation. So in order to make sure that all sides have depth, you can start with using the push-pull tool that we'll discuss in workshop 2. So remember that this tool will take a flat surface, so a 2D drawing, and it'll extrude it to create a 3-dimensional object with depth. And you have to make sure all the objects in your models are 3-dimensional. Another issue that's likely to appear is that while editing your 3D model, you may forget to erase some lines or faces that could end up becoming hidden within your finished object. And these internal faces and lines create problems for the 3D printer and will keep your model from being printable. So you have to make sure to check for any unnecessary internal geometry in your model. And one good way to start is to zoom in to the inside of your object so you can see if there are any extra lines that you can erase. So so like I was showing here in the model, if I start on the outside and then I just zoom in enough, you will see eventually that it'll go. See, now I've zoomed in enough, and now I'm on the inside of the object. So if I scroll like this, you can see that I was on the inside. And so this is a closed solid. Zooming in towards the inside is the best way to see if there's any internal lines that you can erase. But you should be warned that not every line on the inside is erasable, because some of them are necessary because they form the boundaries of your model. And so if you erase them, you will erase one of the sides of your model, thus making it an open solid. So you have to be careful. So now I want to view a video that will show how one might go about inspecting a design for areas that may cause problems with 3D printing. Note that for the software that the person in this video is using is not Google SketchUp. However, it's actually a program called Blender. But that being said, the video is still a good source for some ideas on how to find and fix problem areas in 3D models. So now let's check out the video.
Hi there, my name is Bart and I work for Shapeways, and today I'm going to show you how to inspect your design and find any non-manifold areas and how to fix them. For this I'm using a design uploaded to our forum by Fidget, and Fidget had ripped a 3D model from a game and tried to have it printed, but it didn't work because it had non-manifold areas. I've loaded the file into Blender here, and the first thing I'll usually do is I'll just do a visual inspection and see if I find any inverted normals, which would show up as dark patches here. I'm not finding any, so I'm pretty happy with this. And I think the real problem is just the non-manifoldness. I'll first clean up the mesh a bit by removing duplicated vertices. When you import STL files, probably in other packages as well, you will have lots of double vertices. I'll just remove those. And next thing, I'll use Blender's built-in non-manifold check to see where the problem areas are. Now you already see them light up here, here, and here. And in the status bar of the application, you will actually see that we now have 33 non-manifold edges out of 276 in total. So I'll just go ahead and first inspect them and see what's going on, and then find a way to fix it. And to make it a little easier on myself, I'll just zoom in on this area here first by selecting the problem vertices, hiding the other geometry. Let's see what's going on here. I think the issue is that this shape is not closed. I'll just get rid of this as well. And this. So it's just an empty tube, if you like, and we cannot print it. It needs to be a solid that's completely closed. Fortunately, this is pretty simple to fix. I'll just select the vertices here, add a face, add vertices here. There you go. And let's see if that improves things for me by checking the non-manifoldness again. This doesn't line up anymore, and we've gone down from 33 non-manifold edges to 23. So this is the real problem. I'll do the same here. And yeah, it has the same issue with the shape. There we go. I'll run the check again. Yeah, gone down to 18. Now, the last issue is here with the teeth of the thing, if you like. And I'll just select all of them. Hide the rest of the model. Yeah, they're not closed either. And well, fortunately, that's easy enough to fix. I'll just do it quickly. Oh. There we go. And the non-manifold check is now okay. So I'm pretty confident I can upload this to Shapeways, but I'll just have to make sure it has the right size as well. Now, I'm not really sure what kind of size Fidget had in mind here, but I'll just try and make this 10 centimeters high. Sounds reasonable, especially for a first check. Now, the object here is rotated on all axes. So in order to make it easier to scale it, I'm going to reorient it first. I'm going to put it like this. This. It's okay. Now, I can see the size of the object here, and I'm going to upload it in millimeters, and that means that I want it to be 100 millimeters high, and the rest of the side will follow. Just link the scale. I'm going to have to make the z-axis 100 tall. So, there we are. And the other sizes will be 80 millimeters and 22, which sounds good. I'll just export this. And 100 millimeters high. I'm going to upload it to Shapeways now. Alright, I just skipped ahead a few minutes. I've successfully uploaded the file into my gallery, and it has appeared. You can see it here. And let me just check to see if everything is okay with it. As you can see, the general shape is fine, although the lighting is a bit different from what I would expect. Now, this is just the result of the way we calculate our previews. We use what we call smooth shading, and the 3D applications usually have flat shading. This is just the previewing thing. It doesn't affect the printing result in any way. We just use your exact geometry for that, so don't worry. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll be able to find any non-manifold errors yourself now and fix them. But please remember, if you run into a problem that you cannot fix, you can always send the files to service@shapeways.com, and we'll look into it and do our best to fix it for you. That's it for today. I'll be seeing you again next time. Bye-bye.
Alright, the video is over now, so we'll get back to the presentation. Now, as many of you are likely aware, the deadline for submitting 3D models to CSIM for printing has passed, and at this point you can still turn in models for printing. However, the reason why we set the deadline at the previous date for March 24th was that considering the large number of 3D models that we're expecting from everyone, it may prove difficult to print them all in time if many of them are submitted late. In other words, the longer you wait to submit the design for printing, the more likely it will be that your design will not be printed in time for the competition. Another important change is that instead of waiting to give you your printed objects at the George R. Brown Center the day before the CSIM Challenge, as we previously decided to do, we've instead decided to mail you your printed objects as soon as possible once they're printed. So the lead teachers will receive an email once the object has been mailed so that you all know when to expect your objects. Alright, and that's everything I have for today. So the next steps are, if you have any questions, you can chat with me live on CSIM Break right now. I'll be there for the next 15 minutes, or you can contact me as needed at techadmin@csim.org. And other than that, I will see you for the final workshop, workshop number 6, on April 12th. Alright, thank you.